just waiting for the webcast to start before I do my intro. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Nicole Gray, and I am chair of the Women's Council at McDonald Hopkins. I'm also a member of the Labor and Employment Practice. I want to welcome all of you here in our Cleveland audience, as well as everyone who is joining us on the live webcast. Today's program, Keeping Pace with Change, is the fourth in a series of dynamic and engaging conversations with corporate and civic women leaders that our Women's Council will host this year. McDonald Hopkins attorneys are proud to be viewed as trusted advisors to our clients and community partners. In the same spirit, we strive to be a resource for professionals in our community and aspiring professionals, as we're pleased to be joined today by students from Walsh University's business program. To that end, the speakers featured in our series are addressing industry trends, economic impact, diversity and inclusion, pathways of leadership, and other topics that shape and influence our local and national marketplace. We're excited today to have two excellent speakers join us: Julie Boland, Managing Partner of Ernst Young's Cleveland office, and Amy Brady, Chief Information Officer at KeyBank. Prior to properly introducing Julie and Amy, I have a few housekeeping items I wanted to review with you. Following Julie and Amy's prepared remarks or video, as you will see, they'll be happy to answer your questions, and we will engage in a question and answer format session. For those of you here with us in Cleveland, there are cards that have been provided to you to write down your questions. Simply raise the card above your head and someone from our staff will get it for you. We're also happy to bring you a microphone if you want to ask your question in person. For our participants outside of Cleveland who are watching on our webcast, you're welcome to email your questions by clicking on the email link on your screen. So back to our speakers. Julie Boland, as I said, is the managing partner for the Cleveland office of Ernst Young. In addition to her managing partner role, she is the global services coordinating partner on accounts spanning several industries, including global manufacturing, mining and metals, and power and utilities. As a former CFO, she has extensive experience managing all financial, SEC reporting, treasury, internal audit, information technology, and risk management for a multi-location publicly held organization. Additionally, her background includes international and domestic debt and equity markets, strategic alternative review, hostile tender offer, financial and operational restructuring, and bankruptcy activities. Prior to joining Ernst Young, Julie served as the CFO for Oglebay Norton Company, as well as the CFO for Flight Options LLC. Julie has also held vice president positions at both Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and Company. Amy, as I previously noted, is Key's Chief Information Officer, leading the company's technology and operations organization. In her role, Amy oversees all of Key's shared services for technology, operations, data, servicing, security, and procurement. Technology and operations is comprised of more than 4,500 individuals and plays a significant role, probably now more than ever, in Key's ability to win in the marketplace by enabling the company's goal to build enduring client relationships through innovative solutions and extraordinary service. Technology and operations delivers innovative technology to clients such as mobile and online banking, which who doesn't love that? And world-class operations solutions, including loan payment and treasury services. Amy also serves on the company's executive council and executive leadership team. Prior to joining Key in 2012, Amy served as Chief Information Officer, Enterprise Technology and Operations at Bank of America, a company she had been with since 1987. Both Amy and Julie are very involved in civic and charitable organizations in the Northeast Ohio community and have received various awards and recognitions. For example, Amy was recognized by Crain's Cleveland as CIO of the Year in 2014, and Julie received the YWCA Women of Achievement Award in 2015. For today's conversation, Julie and Amy will provide their perspective about managing through change in their roles at two of Northeast Ohio's largest employers and discuss emerging issues that companies will need to address in the near future to grow and maintain competitive market share. I'm very pleased to turn the program over to Julie and Amy, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you. Thank you. We have, it's about a little bit over 4-minute video, and we're going to show this first, and then Amy and I will tag team on a couple things. I've known Amy for several years, but just the context around it, the theme of today is keeping pace with change. And one of the things that our firm that we really are talking to our clients about is how do you keep up with that change, whether it's regards to risk or talent or technology, different skill sets you're going to need to be able to compete. So this it's a lot of different information coming at you, but it's really interesting, and when we play it for people, it just gives them some food for thought. So with that, we'll play this and then we'll kick off. I have to become. I think people get the picture. We can probably.
No,
It's almost
fine.
over. I don't know why the.
Right on purpose.
We're supposed to be thinking through. Okay, we're supposed to be watching that. All right, so with that, I'll maybe spend a couple minutes about EY, and then you
Yeah,
can talk about Key
sure.
and some of the things. You can take this conversation and a lot of what you saw on that video in so many different directions. I mean, both Amy and I are taking notes, because every time I see it, I think about something else. So, kind of as leaders in your organizations, or if you're working with clients, what do you do with this information? How do you start thinking through what's important to your clients and help them succeed? And so at EY, if you just, for those of you who are not familiar, the firm, half the firm started here in 1903. So we're very, very proud of that legacy here. We currently have 1,200 people here in the Cleveland office, Cleveland and Akron, client servers, as well as some of our global and national practices. And on a worldwide basis, and the reason why this is so important to us, on a worldwide basis, we're almost over $30 billion now, and we have about 250,000 employees. And the pace of change, and if you talk about the information that's coming at all of us, every day, in order to serve our clients, the first and foremost thing we need to do is make sure we're attracting talent and we have the best people we can have. And so when you start talking about, you can think about that. How do you retain? How do you attract them? How do you develop them? How do you retain them into the next leaders so they can serve our clients? And a lot of it is around talent development. What skill sets do they need for the future? And we'll talk, I'm sure, today, as we saw some of the questions that came in, about digital and technology, and there's there's so many different things that are going on right now. We spend a lot of our time on people. So this video is actually put together over the past year or so. We've put together a new service offering called our People Advisory Services, where we actually work with clients, whether it's transformational HR change, or whether we're working with them on culture or on benefits plans, or how do you attract and retain or develop people. My mic is not working. Thank you. Okay. So there's a lot of different avenues, and I think what Amy and I really want to do is just share a little bit about what we're seeing, but more importantly, ask questions. And it seems like people were really interested around risk, around people, technology, and talent. So with that, Amy.
So first off, congratulations for having a women's network, and I really applaud that, and really thrilled to be here to support it. I also would applaud the brave men who are on the web and in the room. They're the smart men around, right, that will come to a women's networking event. So you always want to shout out to the men here. We didn't prepare remarks because we really thought about that video is a great thought starter, and we definitely want to get this to be very, very interactive. But let me just tell you about Key's journey. Key, for those of you who are Cleveland-based, hopefully you're well aware of who we are and what we do locally and also nationally. But I like to think of us as we're a 190-year-old institution who is on a journey to transform ourselves into being born digital. We're unlike the children who are being born today, who are going to be born digital. We have to transform from all of the legacy that we've had to becoming digital. And we're well on that journey, and quite frankly, the journey will never end. But to be on that type of journey, it's change for your clients, it's change for your employees, it is absolutely a lot of technology change, it's security change because of the amount of data you're securing and processing and analyzing. And the cyber world is an incredibly dynamic space, and having that as a part of my responsibility is one of those that keeps you up at night, right? But there's just so much change. So I think your theme of keeping pace with change is a really important one. I also think it's a misnomer. I don't think any of us ever keep pace with change, right? So I think successful companies, in my opinion, I agree with Julie, it starts with talent. And it starts with diversity of talent, diversity in all the traditional measures of diversity, but diversity of thought and experience. Because with that diversity, you have teams that have greater change readiness, change agility, and quite frankly, creators of change. And so you need all of that to be able to, quote, keep pace with the change. You can't truly keep pace with it because you don't know what's around the next door. And where we used to be able to be fast followers in all of our industry, and fast follower was sometimes defined as 3 to 5 years, now you can be a fast follower, but you better be prepared to do it in days. Mm-hmm. Maybe you'll have months, but you certainly don't have years. That would lead to extinction. The other thing I would just point out here that I thought was very interesting is there was I saw a couple of you kind of react to the smart machines are going to replace 1 in 3 jobs by 2025, and I think you commented, hey, that's right around the corner. I will tell you, it's happening now. Mm-hmm. So if you don't think it is, it is. And I think different than other cycles we've been in economic cycles over the years, right now technology is impacting every industry out there. So whether you're a lawyer, it's impacting the law field. Whether you support whatever industry you support, it's impacting every industry. There is nothing that is out there that's not being impacted by technology. And industries that don't believe that are really putting their head in the sand and need to wake up to the fact that it is changing everything that we're doing. So with that, I think we'd love to take any questions, and we could take the conversation wherever you'd like to go, either around industry, technology trends, career growth, whatever that might be.
I just want to add on to your technology comment, because one of the things, we are baking in robotic technology to almost every single one of our service lines as we go out and talk to customers. So whether it's looking at the this sounds benign, but looking at the tax revision and figuring out what the steps are, and actually putting bots in spreadsheets to take that human element out. Mm-hmm. Now, what we're hoping initially it's going to do is it's going to reduce the time of people doing and allowing our people to do more analyzing. But as that continues on, there's going to have a definite impact.
Absolutely.
Just to start the conversation, one of the things that stuck out to me in the video was the time to act is now in kind of bold. Yeah. And I think that that's really true in terms of looking at maybe chasing change is more appropriate than keeping pace with change. But how would you, or how are your companies or companies that you advise evaluating risks? How are you seeing them evaluate their risks for the future?
Sure. Well, I'll start with that. And so we work with a lot of audit committees and boards on risk. Everyone's probably heard, what is enterprise risk management? I mean, it's one of those comments that everybody you ask has a little bit of a different definition of it. As we look at risk, we try to work with our clients, and as we're looking at our own risks, is what are the financial risks facing a company? What are the compliance and regulatory risks? What are the operational risks, and what are the strategic risks? And I think what we're finding, compliance and financial risks are a little easier to quantify and look at and understand. It's those operational strategic risks. What's the risk on a reputation? What's your risk on brand? And how do you think about not only what the risks could be, what the impact of those risks are? And are you willing to accept those risks, or do you want to do something with mitigating those risks and laying them off? So I think what we see, the companies that do it best, where there's a tone at the top with the board, with the audit committee, and with the C-suite, where they are baking conversations about risk into everyday conversation. So it's not once a year we're going to do our enterprise risk management interviews, and we're going to have this beautiful book that tells you what all the risks are, but it's how do you bake that into how do you bake it into your monthly budget review meetings, where you're saying, okay, well, what's the risk that we're going to miss this, or what's the risk that client's not going to pay us? And asking questions, so it's starting to get baked into the culture and the fabric of the organization. And those who take it really seriously and take a look back, and if we talk about some of the risks, the most popular risks we're seeing at the board level right now, and Amy can talk about cyber, but cyber is probably number one. A lot of FCPA, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, talent and workforce. I mean, there's a lot of risks around what's going on with the workforce of the future, and what is the skill set they need. We also have a lot on the regulatory side, which is not surprising, and technology. How much do you invest? Where do you invest? How do you adopt? Things of that nature.
I think you covered that well, and I would just put an exclamation point on the companies who build it into their routines, whatever that is for that company. It's really important that it not be a afterthought. Risk is embedded into everything you do, and in my role with technology and then all of the shared service operations, we are basically a control function for the company as well as an enabling function of the company, and that's the way I view it. I would say the last thing about risk is making sure that you have a risk culture that is not only from the top down but from the bottom up, meaning you have a way for people to escalate risks, to really self-identify and say, you know what, I see something, whether it's ethical or operational or whatever, but I have that raising their hand and having a voice, and that's something we actually measure at Key, and it's really important because you see the headlines nowadays when that self-identification is happening, but you're not listening to it. That's a huge issue. So I would add culture.
A safe environment for people to raise those, that there's not retribution for that.
And
Couple of questions.
Sure.
I just had a comment. As an HR leader, I applaud the companies that are taking action on these things. You see these astounding statistics or predictions, statements. Can you mind repeating that? Because people on the webcast won't be able to hear you. As an HR professional, I applaud the companies that are already taking action, because as we see these astounding statements and predictions in this video, I think the challenge comes into play where we have to educate and communicate the awareness so that people believe so they can take action, because it's difficult to take action when you don't have a lot of people believing that this is really going to happen. You know what I mean? Or that technology is going to take over their job.
The one thing I would comment on that, though, and there's a fear element when you see videos like this, and we've all seen videos like this, and I like to catch people. Nobody should be afraid of that. Actually, again, go back to the pace of change concept and embracing change. Yes, 1 in 3 jobs will get replaced, but there's another statistics that says 1 in 3 new jobs will be created. And I do speak to colleges, and Julie and I both have children in college, and it is frightening. I listen to the classes they're taking and what they're being taught, and I'll talk to professors and I'll say, that's terrific, but guess what? The employee you're preparing today, by the time they get out, they may not be prepared for the jobs that I have, because guess what? I don't know what the jobs that I'm going to need are 5 years from now. We will create them, but I can guarantee that a portion of the jobs I have today I won't need 5 years from now, right? So, and now you can get afraid by that and go into being paralyzed by it, but the reality is we're also creating some really cool new jobs out of all of this. Right. So, think about the cyber field. There wasn't even a cyber, 10 years ago, the cyber field was in defense, banks, and the government. Now, everybody's got somebody working on cyber in their institutions, right?
It's our fastest growing practice.
Yeah.
We can't get enough people.
I just think
it's good.
About education and awareness.
Yeah.
And embracing that change.
Absolutely.
And definitely, and you talked about kind of your comment goes to kind of embracing change internally, and you talked about some things that companies can do, baking in risk, having a risk culture, understanding that internally. How about externally? Are there experts that you look to, or that you're seeing companies rely on in terms of being able to evaluate that risk?
Sure, EY.
Let's say we hire EY to do work for us.
It is. I say that in jest, but there are a lot of phenomenal third-party consultants who can come in. A big part of our business is taking a look, and we have a risk practice, and they go from, how do you develop the governance and strategy behind what risk, both internal audit or SOX or strategic, kind of going across that risk profile. But there are a lot of great third parties out there, and I think it's one of those you have to look within yourselves and be intellectually honest about who and what skill set and competencies you have within your own organization to determine whether or not they have that capability. Because there are some, we keep going back to cyber, but if you come back to cyber, do you need to have a cyber person on staff 100% of the time, depending on what your company is, or do you bring people in and co-source or outsource that? And part of it is a dynamic on what is your organization, what are the risks, and how do you want to staff accordingly, with balancing, you could spend all the money in the world to protect yourself from cyber, or do you find the right people to come in and help you identify what you need to work on?
I think that's absolutely right. I would add on top of that, being intellectually honest on what your company is good at and what you're not. We're not all experts in everything, and so having that there are opportunities where you want to bring in a partner to help you with a skill set or a discipline that, quite frankly, you might not be able to find regionally. You might not be able to find at a level of and magnitude that you need. So there's all those things to consider. So on the other hand, I think you have to be really honest about what you need to be good at and go get that talent, and not become overly dependent on someone else on the things that are supposed to be your core competencies. And those competencies can change over time.
And both of you come from companies that have dealt with change management and implementing change management. I know KeyBank has just gone through that. Can you talk as to some kind of best practices that you've seen as far as companies handling change management or implementing change management in a positive way?
So, so for those who don't know, we just completed an acquisition. We announced an acquisition a little over a year ago, and within 10 months we converted that financial institution to KeyBank this past October. Look, I think the people that do change management really well, the companies that do change management really well, understand first it's about people. It's about your clients, and it's about your employees, and it's about culture. Culture eats, you know, the old adage, the culture eats strategy for lunch. Well, culture eats execution for lunch too when it comes to change management. And if you don't fully understand your culture, and where your culture is compared to the change you're trying to execute, I can guarantee it won't be successful. The last thing I would tell you that you don't want to do for successful change is think that technology drives change. I could put in the best system and it will fail if you don't actually help users adopt it, whether that's your client or your employee. And so you could spend all the money in the world on the greatest, latest thing, but unless you think about the impact of that to roles, to adoption, then the change. So it has to be multi-dimensional. I always think the people, process, technology, culture, all of that has to be embedded in your change management programs.
Yeah.
We've got some questions back here.
Yeah, I just had just a general question with both you and Julie about, well, Amy, I should say you. I'm saying Julie because I'm from EY, so I know Julie. But just how receptive has either, Amy, for you, with working with multiple vendors just in that technology space, and Julie, with you, with clients, and both of you just in industry, just from an anecdotal standpoint, how do you feel leaders in organizations are receptive to everything you just said, from people, process, technology, and how do you feel they are preparing themselves for the change that is coming, based on what we're talking about today?
I think there's a spectrum. I think there's a spectrum of people who get it, are thinking through it on all avenues of their organization. And I think there are others who are resistant to change. And, you know, just to build on kind of Amy's whole change management, you know, there's a whole kind of engagement aspect of change management, and there's a readiness aspect, and then there's adoption aspect. That engagement has to come from the top. I mean, it is toned from the top on day one, and it's making sure that you are communicating a critically important case for change, right? And so if the leadership of an organization can't have that elevator speech to say, this is important to this organization because, and have everyone buy into it, that whole engagement, you know, you don't have engagement from the start. And then everything that Amy articulated about failure comes right on the heels of that. You know, the whole readiness aspect is about the people and how you train them, and the whole, you know, teaming and training and development. And so it's almost like a cycle. And once that they adopt, your organization get really good at change if they kind of think through that, you know, that approach. But we see many organizations, and where we have projects, be they if they're small or large projects, the ones that tend to not be successful are the ones where the case for change has not been articulated well enough, and there doesn't have that senior executive support that it needs. And it just happens. You know, there's politics, there's a lot of things that go on within organizations that people have to, depending on the size and the culture of it, that people have to wade through in order to kind of get that done.
Hi, this is for Julie. I have one question regarding climate risk.
does EY have a division regarding this type of risk?
I'm sorry, what risk?
Climate
We
risk,
do.
sustainability.
We do. I'm always amazed when I find out. So we have an organization within. It's called CCAS. What's CCAS? I can't even remember what it stands for. But it's essentially a sustainability practice. So you know how a lot of organizations now are coming out with sustainability reports. We can go in and do a couple things. One, we can either go in and attest those. So whatever numbers they have in there, we audit it, just like our audit practice. But we also help people go through the whole reporting. There's a global reporting aspect to that. And we do have consultants who will actually go through and say, hey, a really good report should have these elements in it, and we'll help advise on what those are.
Another question. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just concerned about thinking about risk every day. I understand when people are first hit with this that there is sort of a culture of fear. And another consulting firm at one time did a study, and they said that successful CEOs were motivated by fear of failure. And I was so disappointed in that outcome, because I think that that's only a short-term strategy, and that long-term you have to have some vision for how all this change can lead you to something bigger, better, like some success. Mm-hmm. And that you don't want to get stuck in that, risk every day and culture of fear. It needs to be something bigger. And I was just curious about maybe it's an evolution that you just have to get past the focus on risk to get to something better.
Well, I wouldn't even start with a focus on risk when you talk about change or pace of change. I think, and by the way, when I said the comment around fear, I think some people see those statistics and are afraid of them, versus I actually get excited, right? I get excited about the possibility. I get excited about the vision and where we can go and what we can accomplish. But I agree with Julie. When you're thinking about change and change management for a company, painting that vision, or even for my division. So we have a mantra for my group right now that we're going to digitize the enterprise. Right? My goal is to help Key become a totally digital enterprise. That means full automation of everything except the interaction with the client. And even that is in many ways automated, because most of you probably do most of your banking either online banking or through your smartphone. Now, that's aspirational. By the way, it will not happen in my career. It probably won't happen in my lifetime. But if you think that way, and then you embrace the excitement about how do you solve different business solutions with that in mind, you might implement the technology differently. You might design a process differently. You might design a role differently. And that's energizing. There's no fear in that at all. You build the risk management into your processes. So you're not focused on risk as a primary driver, you're focused on risks. We like to say we're good risk managers, that's what bankers do. And we use good risk management for a business competitive advantage. So we kind of build it into everything. So I agree with you, but I want to make sure that I wasn't clear. I don't drive through fear at all. I hope I drive through motivation and excitement about the future. And then acknowledge that it's fearful for some people, and then you have to help bring them along.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, your comment's really interesting. What we're seeing a lot of is companies are becoming purpose-led. Mm-hmm. So, you talk about inspiration, and you talk about the generation that's coming up, the generation of next leaders that's coming up. How do you inspire those young folks to really be able to be part of an organization? And, we went through an exercise. We had a new global chairman, and for those of you who know EY, a while ago, our tagline was quality in everything we do. Well, right, quality is really important in everything that we do, but is that the inspirational meaning for why EY exists and why somebody would want to go there? So we've kind of determined our own purpose, which is building a better working world. And if you think of how we can articulate ourselves to recruits or to alumni or to clients, it's what are we how are we building a better working world by providing our people opportunities for advancement and to be able to take care of their families? How are we building a better working world for our clients to help them achieve their goals? And how are we building a better working world for the communities in which we work, live, and play, and give back to that? So it is a much more, I think leaders who can define that vision and purpose for their organization are going to be in the long term most successful. And we're starting to see more and more companies think through what is their purpose, what is the why they are doing things. And if any of you have ever seen Simon Sinek, I don't know if anybody knows Simon Sinek. Mm-hmm. There's a TED Talk. It's his first TED Talk. He became famous on this, but he talks about the golden circle, and it's all about the power of purpose. And we spend so much time talking about what we do, not why we do it. And the why we do it is so much more important than the what we do. So it's good thought.
So some of the things that we've talked about and the companies are based here, but how do you think, or have you seen the American approach in handling and managing change differ from maybe other areas of influence around the world, so Europe or Asia? Have you seen differences there?
Oh, that's a hard one.
It's interesting. I had for 10 years, I was with Bank of America for 25 years prior to joining Keys, and for the 10 years prior to joining Key, I was in global roles and had global teams around the world. And I would say, fundamentally, I don't think there is a difference. Fundamentally, it's still about people, and it's about culture, and it's about readiness. It's about all the same things. But I do think companies that have global footprints, that are driving global change, need to acknowledge that there are differences in how cultures adapt certain types of change. And if you acknowledge that and then adjust your plans accordingly, but I think foundationally and fundamentally, we're all human beings, right? So it's a matter of knowing those aspects of the change.
And knowing what the common goal is. I mean, so a couple of my accounts where I'm the global coordinating partner. I have teams not only here, but also in Asia, Europe, and North South America, all focused on the same goal, which is how do we make our service the best? We're the best service provider and best business advisor for our clients, regardless of where they are. And it's funny because sometimes you get on these big global calls, and you're trying to push an initiative, you're trying to articulate what the benefits for a proposal might be. And we haven't talked a lot about inclusiveness yet, but including everybody's perspectives in those conversations, regardless of some of the cultural differences, is really important. I mean, sometimes you have to pull people out. Sometimes you have to ask people, can you stop for 1 second so we can hear everybody else's? But I think if there's a common purpose of what you're trying to do, and you're willing to have an open dialogue about how to pull all these different perspectives into play, I haven't seen a massive difference either.
Well, and that's a great segue into another question that I have.
I think there was
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to take this into a slightly more macro level. And first of all, I wanted to thank you for this video, because I just had a conversation with my sister the other night. She said there's absolutely nothing good about getting older. And after I watched this, I'm like, not only is it great to be old, the older you are, the better off you are. So I wanted to thank you for that. I looked at that and went, I thank God I'm not 25. But seriously, I looked at all the things that are being systematically changed about the workplace. The fact that organizations are becoming more virtual, that real estate is kind of seen as a non-returning asset. We don't need it. We can just sort of make everything virtual. Yeah. Teams are kind of fluid. And I looked at the survey of millennials and looked at all the things that they value, and pretty much each one, issue by issue, is being systematically eliminated. Yeah. At some point, where does this go? Yeah. Where all the things that people value in jobs are being eliminated? What's the end game here? And throw on the fact that 2016 and by 2025, a third of all white collar jobs will be eliminated. Keep doing that. Where does that leave us?
Well, you want to go? I got a couple.
Go ahead.
We talk about this to say a lot is an understatement, because it's the whole, how do you control costs and be more efficient, reduce your footprint and only have X number of square foot per person, and hoteling and all that. How do you kind of take that cost control and efficiency and balance it with the requirements for our business to be connected not only to our clients, but to be connected to one another? I don't think we have an answer. We talk about lots of different ways, and it's almost lots of small ways, and we take it down as we talk about teaming. There's an element on the big macro is, okay, what do you do? But at the end of the day, people's experience is going to be how they experience the team at the account level. And so as partners in our organization, and this is very EY focused, but as partners in our organization, we debate a lot. Are we going too far by taking, we've got this workplace of the future now where everybody hotels and there's lots of common spaces. but there's a lot less room. So we know a lot of people choose to work from home, and that kind of defeats the purpose of being connected. So we're trying to do it more at the account level, and then finding other creative ways, like just a simple little one. This morning, we had Come Meet the Leaders, where we had our staff ones come in for a breakfast, and we had 20 partners, and we probably had 50 24-year-olds, and we sat around tables and we just talked for an hour about who they are, what they were doing, because we had heard from our People Advisory Forum that that was really important to them. So I wish I had a perfect answer for you. I think it's going to be a constant inherent tension for a while. I don't know if we'll ever balance it out perfectly, but it takes, you got to take it to the individual level, because I think systemically you can't make everybody happy. So you need to kind of make sure you're really thinking about people one-on-one.
You know, the only other piece I would add is it's interesting. For years and years, we did the same thing, and you know, you had these tech teams, and you say they could be anywhere. And the reality is now we're finding for some development, we're actually going backwards. We're going back to where the teams are co-locating with business partners and having those diverse teams in one room. If you want to do more DevOps and do real deployment and real-time development and more really truly agile iterative, having the teams together is almost required. Right, and we find interesting. I'll go out to our operations centers or our tech centers, and I'll see people in rooms together collaborating, and they'll take over rooms for months at a time as they're working through their development, so they can whiteboard and create. So that creative so I think it's going to evolve. I don't think we all do have the answer yet. And as I tell our young recruits, as I tell my children, communication still is a human thing. Communication is not through your device. That is a form of communication, and it's an important form of communication, but there is still a person-to-person relationship in a lot that happens through business and through the world, and quite frankly, the next generation is actually seeking more of it. They don't necessarily have all the skills to do it, but they're seeking more of it.
So I guess what you're saying is in some cases you're finding that short-term cost savings are actually long-term expenses.
You know, I don't know that I would go there, the comment of it's short-term cost savings or long-term expenses. I think you have to understand the dynamics and be able to respond to it. I think there are times where there are groups that it makes more sense to bring them together and require them to come in to work together. And there are times where it's perfectly more efficient and higher quality for the person. And people's lives go through cycles, as do business cycles. So I think being more agile and flexible and adaptive and not so rigid, I don't think that's a bad thing. We have hoteling space too, and in a lot of cases it works really, really well. So I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all.
Hello, I'm an undergraduate at Walsh University. I'm an international student, and my question was, knowing everything you know today about how the world is constantly changing, what advice would you give to yourself, to your undergraduate self? And how would you stay relevant and attractive to future employees, especially after what we just saw, that everything I learned last year should be outdated next year?
That's right, it will. Okay, I'll answer that one, because I say this to my children all the time, because I graduated with a degree in music and a degree in psychology. Go figure. That did not prepare me for where I am today at all. That's not true. I use a lot of those skills. But I say to everyone who's going to college, I don't care if you want to be a doctor, a teacher, an attorney, a CEO of a company, learn how to code. You may never code again in your future, but you have to know how technology can be applied to solve problems. So take at least one. So if I were an undergraduate self, go learn how to code. And again, my one daughter is taking a course right now, and she's cursing me every day that she goes to class, but she's getting it, because I believe the CEOs of the future have to have technical aptitude. They don't have to be programmers, but they have to have technical aptitude. Mm-hmm. And you're seeing it in your practice, right? You have to understand at least what questions to ask and what the opportunities are there.
I'd say technology, but I won't build on that. The other thing I would say, though, is the power of networking, and networking in a positive. I mean, I don't think I really figured it out until I was in my mid-30s. You know, I always thought it was such a negative, because you're going and you're asking for something. And what I have found, and what we encourage a lot of our newer employees to do, is create those relationships today that are going to grow with you. And it's not because you want something from someone, it's because you genuinely care and you authentically like somebody else. And those relationships over time, you're going to be the next leader, 10, 15 years from now, you're going to be a leader in your organization. If you find that other person, nice things will come out of that. I mean, not only a great friendship, but also a trusted advisor relationship that you've built over 10 years, you're not trying to create in 2 months.
That's very true. And networking is not LinkedIn.
Yeah,
LinkedIn
that's true.
is not the definition of networking.
That's true. That's true.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So to kind of expand on the coding comment and technology as being a driver, what IT trends do you see impacting organizations in the next now and in the next 3 years or so?
So I would say there's no doubt in any of our minds that it's robotics, it's artificial intelligence, and it's cognitive computing on top of the technologies that already exist today with the cloud.
Blockchain.
And blockchain is that's another framework, if you will, that's going to emerge. Much like some people have talked about Salesforce, it's a framework that people can build on. Blockchain is clearly something that'll change industry. But it's not one. What's different, I think, versus decades prior, it's not one technology. It's the combination of many technologies put together, and the ability for those technologies to learn, to truly learn over time. And so I'd say those are the trends you've got to watch.
And I'm checking to make sure I wasn't
I'll let you
stepping
know
on
if
anyone.
we see
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. So one of the things that we've talked about before and in that video was addressed, that the idea that people want more flexibility in terms of work environment, and that creates issues with work from home capability from a technology standpoint, or bring your device to work type situations. And how are your organizations handling that, or what are you seeing organizations do to handle that?
Flexibility is part of who we are, and we really has to be. I mean, the demands on our people's time are really, really high, especially when we get into this part of the year with busy season and such. We have done a lot of different programs, and we're seeing a lot of our clients. You talk about diversity and inclusiveness and how to make sure you don't lose half your workforce. When we hire 51% women and 49% men, somewhere in that vicinity. And if you look at the partner population, it is not even close, right? That is probably 20s, and we're making improvements. And we do that. We look at the same with ethnic minorities, LGBT, and really focus on when people leave, why are they leaving? Are they leaving because it's not convenient in wherever they are in their life? And if so, how can we try to fix that? Are they leaving because the culture is such that they don't feel like they're included and they feel like they're different and people treat them differently? And if that's the case, we try to change things. So I think flexibility, this day and age, there are some jobs that's very difficult to do, and I think people need to recognize this as they go in there. But I think organizations that learn how to adapt and learn how to work with their people and are at least open to the dialogue. Now, I think organizations have to do that, but I also think people need it's a two-way street. I mean, if an organization is going to give some flexibility, it's the requirement of the other person who's receiving it to treat that with a lot of dignity and respect and as a privilege and something that they work on. So I think it has to go both ways.
I agree. I mean, we have lots of, we call it workplace mobility. So it's not work from home, but it's mobility, because it could be you're working from multiple offices, it could be you work from home, whatever. And we want to provide that opportunity for the roles that it works for. There are some roles that unfortunately require you to be in a physical location, and so if you're going to have one of those roles, you have to be there. But I do think working through all of the things Julie said are important, and then providing the tools. When it comes to bring a device to work, we are kind of a hybrid organization, so I'll just throw that out there. I mean, we provide the laptops, desktop type thing, but we allow people to bring their own smartphone, their own iPad, that type. So, but there are certain things that I don't allow to happen on people's device, because you as consumers of financial services wouldn't want me to let them do it on their personal device, that we require it be done on our systems. And so I think companies have to define that and just be really articulate about what you're willing to do and why, and explain. I think when people understand why, they go, oh, okay, I get it.
So I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book, but I'm the president of the Lean In chapter at Walsh, and this question has to do more with the diversity of the previous question, but I wanted to ask both of you, what was your biggest challenge as a woman in the workforce?
Oh, I have such a hard time with this question. I'll tell you, mine was my own lack of self-confidence. If I think back to when I first started, this is as my kids are in college and going to be coming out, the other piece of advice I give myself is give yourself a little more credit, right? I mean, I was the person, and you could say it's because I'm a woman or how I'm wired, I don't know, but you read a lot of articles that say women lack the confidence they need to ask for the next job, to ask for the promotion. They need to have 7 out of 10 characteristics. I mean, there's a bunch of research and scientific research that tells that states that, and I think that I've overcome it. But for me, that was probably my toughest. Is many times when I was in investment banking, when I was in the mining industry, I will say the vast majority of the time I was the only woman in the room. It didn't really bother me. It just didn't. But as that confidence, being in a larger group and finding my voice, I had to overcome. After my first, it took me a while.
Yeah, I think as I guess I'll hit the same. I'm a lot like Julie in the sense that I don't know that I've ever been not had an opportunity because I was a woman, right? Now, I had to be very comfortable in my career the entire time about being the only woman in the room. And there are many times still today, less than 20% of CIOs for Fortune 500 companies are women, right? So if I go to a CIO conference, I guarantee probably I'm the only one there, right? So I think you have to get comfortable with that, and fortunately, maybe it's because I grew up with brothers, I got very comfortable with that. But look, I think the most important lesson I learned about diversity was in my career when I was asked to build an innovation group. And at that time in my career, I always felt like I valued diversity, but what I truly realized working with people who were smarter than me, who had skills that were different from me, who came from different places of the world, was that if you want to truly innovate, you cannot surround yourself with people who look like you, think like you, and act like you. It just scientifically is proven you will not innovate. You can incrementally improve, but you will not innovate. So go back to the conversation we started earlier around change. Well, if you really want to be a change-ready organization, you better look around to make sure you've got great diversity, because that's the only way, those differing points of view is the only way you will excel at that change, by listening to those points of view and taking pieces and parts, and then moving people forward. So I think I honed that skill as I went along, and I'll tell you, you have to be really confident that you are the dumbest person in the room, meaning you've assembled a team who are all better than you, and be okay with that.
And we promised to end at 5 o'clock, so I will just say for those of you who are on the webcast, thank you, and it will continue, but thank you for your time. I think there are a few more questions, if that's okay with the both of you.
Fine.
You partially answered the question. Thank
Oh,
you.
good.
But in terms of your portfolio, your respective portfolios of clients, and your planning for the future, how do you find that organizational culture within your respective firms, and how you all manage change, and from what sources, hence the diversity around the room, breeding innovation, aligns with the clients that you want to retain and the clients that you want to attract, such that it makes the business case to be supportive of keeping pace with change as you're advocating?
Well, just want to make sure I understand the question, is how important is having a diverse team to our clients? Is that kind of
within the culture of your firm, a diverse team, and how are you espousing what you're advocating?
Okay. Well, I'll start with the first. It's adding a little bit onto what Amy said, but diversity and inclusiveness, yes, it's the right thing to do, but it is absolutely a business imperative right now. It is a business imperative, and the research she's alluding to is, well-managed, high-performing, diverse teams outperform well-managed, homogeneous teams almost every single time. I mean, substantially more. So as we look at what our clients' needs are, we take a look and we say, okay, you know, what's the best diverse team we can have, but we also look and say, what's important to our client? And we do have some clients who, when for request for proposal, will say, talk about your diversity and inclusiveness efforts. It's a value that we have. Is it a value that you, our potential advisor or vendor, have as well? So we advocate for it a lot. That is, you know, we talk about people is critical to our business. Diversity and inclusiveness, as a firm, we've won many awards globally for it. It is part of who we are and what we do, and it's our expectation for everybody who walks in the door to value that, to understand it, to appreciate it, and to advocate for it. So we do that, and it's interesting, the past couple of years, we have, at least in Northeast Ohio, but across the country too, have done conferences or done sessions like this. And the fact that we have either clients or potential clients who come up to us afterwards and say, can we just spend a little bit of time with you to understand how because it's a journey, right? You're never gonna get to where you need to be, but we're starting that journey. Can you help us understand what you've done in all these different areas? You know, everyone's like, oh, we should sell that work. I'm like, I think it is the greatest way to get to know a client because they truly open up about some of the challenges and what they're doing, and you can learn about their business in a very different manner. So we're doing a lot more, having a lot more conversations with C-suite folks within that regard. I know Key's huge in that as well.
I was going to say, we don't even have business cases for diversity, right? It is
No.
it is who we are, right? But I would say our purpose, going back to being a purpose-driven organization, which I fully agree with what Julie said, our purpose is to help our clients and communities thrive. And we operate from Maine to Alaska. Well, there's diversity in between there, right? And our clients are extremely diverse. So we have to reflect what our clients and our communities that we serve, and we have to have that diverse workforce because it's an imperative in that regard. And it's an imperative to then understand what a client needs from a financial institution and how those needs are changing and how they're defining it. And so, you know, even in my organization where they don't face off with clients specifically, I look for the diversity because their diversity of thought will help us create better solutions. So I just think it's a way you have to do it. But by the way, to be really good at it means you have to be okay with being uncomfortable, right? It means as a leader, I have to be okay with someone's going to challenge my idea, and I don't always get the last say in the idea, or that, again, someone will have a better idea than me, right? Or they may challenge something that we've done perpetually and say, why do you do that? And I can't come up with the right answer. And so you have to be willing to be uncomfortable to truly value diversity, in my opinion.
I would ask a final question. We had a couple questions come in about the election and kind of some takeaways from the election, and did it change either in your organizations or how you're advising clients in terms of managing change and looking forward to the future based on the election?
So I'll start with that one. We had a lot of conversations with that at our executive team. And interestingly enough, the day after the election, we happened to have our corporate diversity council together in one room. And our CEO, who I'm very proud to work for, is a female, for those who don't know, Beth Mooney. And you know, she started, and I think she said it really, really well. Look, we live in the greatest country in the world. We operate in a democracy that is amazing and we should be celebrated. We have a new president. We will support that, and we will move forward, and we will lead as we do and as we have to under whomever is the president, right? And we want this president to be successful for all of the reasons that all of us want any of our presidents to be successful. So we are using it as an opportunity to have conversation and dialogue and continue to look at how we unite and how we continue to thrive, and our purpose of helping the clients and communities thrive, knowing there's some uncertainty in certain areas, knowing there's, you know, the financial planning is a little bit different, you know, all of the things and dynamics that go with it. But I think it's really important as leaders that we lead.
And we're spending a lot of time starting to talk to our clients on what does this administration, you know, no one knows the answers yet, right? There's going to be there's things to come. But how and what do you start thinking about, especially around tax reform? How does that impact will cash come back to the U.S.? If so, where are you going to invest it? How are you going to think through that? What are the potential ramifications? So we're starting to have healthcare, right? There's so many different angles that what we're trying to do is just get ahead of it and start to have the conversations so we can understand where our clients have concerns. And if it's on tax, make sure that we're bringing our tax experts in. If it's on healthcare, bring our healthcare, just to understand where some of that uncertainty is, and staying close, because I think there is going to be a lot of, our view is there's going to be a lot of change, and how do we do our best to position ourselves to help others.
Well, thank you both very much for coming and presenting and talking today. We will email a survey to all of the participants to get your feedback on this event as well as other Women's Council events that you may have attended. And I encourage you to respond to help us plan additional programs. For those of you viewing on our webcast, thank you for joining us today. For those of you here in Cleveland, please join us for a reception outside. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.